What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Under Par Poker. Today we've got our first session review video. So I've got a couple spots that I've played the last few days that we are going to take a look at in Poker Tracker and then plug into Solver and see what it has to say. So for anyone that hasn't used a Solver, this is GTO Wiz. This is what I use. We've got it set up at 6 max, 100 big blinds effective. That's for the most part the spots that we're going to be in on Ignition. There will certainly be times where the effective stacks are deeper, but we will take that into account when we get there. So what you're looking at is obviously our range of hands on the left here. Pot size is right here on the right, and then we can plug the action in up at the top. A couple things to note about a solver. It's going to assume that everybody's playing as a solver would, so playing GTO strategies. Obviously, that's not the case in 25 zone and in most games. So we'll definitely take that into account. Because of that, it's only going to provide options for GTO lines, so it will never include things like straight opening to 5 big blinds or min raising or all these weird things that you tend to see, especially in the low stakes pools that I'm playing in. So when we run into those spots, we'll pretty much take the closest option that GTO Wiz provides us. And because of that, there will be times where in game the stack size or the SPR is different than it is in GTO Wiz. Obviously, again, we'll plug in as close as we can to the spot in game and see what it says. But there will be times where it'll be slightly different. So just keep that in mind. But we can jump right into our first hand here. This is actually from the first Play and Explain that I uploaded the other day. So we have got pocket jacks in the big blind. There's a low jack open. This is one of the things I'm mentioning. GTO Wiz is not obviously going to provide an option for you to open the low jack to more than 3 big blinds. But anyway, the cutoff 3 bets. This is also a super small 3 bet size given the size of the open. And then it folds to us in the big blind. So if we take a look at our range in the big blind facing this action, we will plug in under the gun open and a cutoff 3 bet folds to us in the big blind. So pocket jacks can mix cold 4 bet and fold. Pocket 10s is going to cold 4 bet sometimes, but I think I'm going to mostly try to condense these lower frequency 4 bets into just a pure yes or no fold or 4 bet. So like pocket 10s, I think I'm pure folding in the big blind facing this action. Queens, obviously pure 4 bet. And then pocket jacks, I'm mostly going to 4 bet. I think folding it is completely fine. Obviously, Solver thinks folding it is completely fine. So we can go either way. But here I do decide to go for the cold 4 bet. One thing to note, assuming that these were the sizes that were taken, min raise from the low jack and then a 3 bet to 6.5 big blinds from the cutoff, we can just cold 4 bet all in with ace king and kings. I think I do like this from ace king, specifically ace king offsuit, but pocket kings, I think I'm going to mostly opt for the non all in cold 4 bet. But just something to note that this option is available to you, assuming that the villains took the size that GTO Wiz likes. But anyway, we go for the cold 4 bet here, just about 3x the cutoff raise size. So let's see what GTO likes. If I am, okay, so just under 3x the cutoff's 3 bet size. So that's what we go for. And the low jack folds and the cutoff calls. We get 7-6-4 rainbow. So let's plug this in here. We cold 4 bet and we get a call from the cutoff. And we get 7 of hearts, 6 of clubs, 4 of spades. In a cold 4 bet pot, this board is pretty irrelevant. Nobody has sets, nobody has straights, nobody has 2 pair. So, we can definitely bet bigger on this board. So I like to play on jack high and lower boards, especially disconnected boards when I'm out of position. I like to play a lot of half pot and check. That is what GTO Wiz likes. So 80% of the time we're half potting. We're checking essentially the rest of the time. And, we're mixing this with all our hands. So if we decide to cold 4 bet pocket 9s, we are half pot and checking. If we cold 4 bet ace 5 suited, we're half pot and checking. So pretty much all our hands, that is our line. I do go for the half pot here. And this one is pretty short. The guy folds to the flop, but folds to the flop c bet. But interesting to take a look at what our pre-flop ranges are and what we're doing on this flop. If this was a higher flop, so like let's turn the 7 into a king. This is going to be more of a range c-bet. So notice now we're not checking at all. And because we're checking, because we're betting at such a high frequency, we're betting for a smaller size. And we're also betting for a smaller size because this board's just better for our range. Obviously, if we have hands like ace king or kings or aces are effectively the nuts here. So we can bet this like quarter size. It still is fine with half pot sometimes, but the preferred size is definitely smaller. And then you can even go for this like 10% sometimes. I think for me, I'm going to go for this somewhere between quarter and 1/3 size pretty much all the time on a board like this. But again, if we make this, let's say a jack, I would expect our sizing to start getting bigger. Yeah, so if it's jack high, half pot again is the preferred size. So even in cold 4-bet pots, we get to size up a little bit on those disconnected boards. But anyway, we will move on to the next one. All right, we have got king 10 suited in the small blind. We've got an under the gun open and a flat from the cutoff. And we decide to squeeze. So let's see. We've got under the gun open. Notice hijack never flats versus an under the gun open. I play 3-better fold from every position except the button in the big blind. Even the button I'm playing nearly 3-better fold pre-flop. And GTO Wiz, even given the lower rake structure that I've got this set up at compared to ignition, there's no flatting from the hijack versus a low jack open. So just a something to keep in mind in your own game. So the cutoff flats and then the button folds and we are in the small blind. Let's take a look at what we are doing. On that note of the lower rake in GTO Wiz, this is going to flat the small blind sometimes because the rake is lower. I would never do this on ignition or a live poker game or anything where the rake is significant. I'm certainly not overcalling. So, there are times where maybe heads up, flatting isn't that bad, and you could do it exploitatively if you're going to flat like pocket threes, like if you're going to overcall pocket threes and play multi-way, so be it. I don't personally play that strategy very often, but I think it's viable. Anyway, back to the hand in question. So we've got king 10 suited. Because I'm not going to be playing overcalls here, I'm going to condense this to pretty much 100% squeeze with king 10 suited. So we do go for it. And let's see, what size is it like? 12 big blinds. Yeah, so we're in the ballpark. And then let's see, we get a fold from under the gun and a double flat from the cutoff. Interesting. Okay, so not exactly the situation we would expect, but let's plug that in. We get Jack 6-3 rainbow. Very similar spot to the last one where we've got a Jack high disconnected board. Let me expand this window a little bit here. So GTO Wiz likes this half pot size still on the Jack high disconnected. And then we can even bet a little bit bigger here if we wanted to. But again, I'm going to try to simplify these into, 1 or 2 strategies, meaning like either I'm range betting 100% for a single size or I'm checking or betting a single size. So like on this board, I'm going to check or bet half pot. My hand, I think, is a decent candidate for going multiple streets. It's not that high up in my range of hands that I'm going to squeeze from the small blind facing the pre-flop action. But I do have some equity here. I've got a backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, an overcard that I assume to be live a lot of the time. So I think our hand is definitely fine to bet. And I also tend to over c-bet compared to what the solver likes. I think people don't defend correctly to c-bets on the flop. So I c-bet a ton, especially in 3-bet pots out of position. I'm c-betting nearly 100%. Solver loves balance and it loves lines that are completely unexploitable. Obviously, that is the whole point of GTO strategy. But in these pools, I don't think balance is the most important thing. I think you want to be exploiting the weak points of the player pool, and one of those I think is incorrectly defending versus flop c bets. So again, I am going to be c betting a lot here, and it looks like our hand is c betting 65% of the time, and it prefers that half pot size. So I do go for a half pot here, and the opponent calls. So let's plug that in. We go half pot call, and we get a 5 of diamonds. So we pick up a flush draw here. And now we've got a decision to make. So we've got an interesting SPR spot here where if we decide to bet the turn and we want to bluff the river, we need to go small on the turn to have enough left in stack to bluff the river. If we go like 3/4 on the turn and the guy calls, the pot's going to be like, nearly $30. And we're only going to have like 9 left, maybe less. So obviously we don't want to be bluffing for 20% pot on the river very often. But it is nice to maximize our fold equity on the turn. So we've kind of got 2 options here. We can bet big on the turn and then give up the river. Or we can bet smaller on the turn and then jam the river. I don't like checking the turn. I think check calling is terrible. I think our hand, because we don't have a front door flush draw, so like let's say this was Jack 6-3 and the 6 was a diamond and the 5 was a spade, I would not like bluffing the river because we're blocking front door flush draws that we really want our opponent to have and fold on the river. So I don't like check calling the turn because we kind of lose the ability to bluff the river, where because we turn a flush draw here, I think our hand is a pretty good candidate to bluff the river. So I don't like checking, but I think we kind of have those 2 options of maximize the fold equity now on the turn and then give up on the river, or bet smaller here and then go for the jam on the river. I do decide to go for the somewhat bigger size. This isn't that big. I think this is a bit of an in-between size. I would have preferred smaller or bigger. So I think we could like block the turn and then jam the river, or we can just bet like probably pot, I think, is fine on the turn. I don't think a jam is great because I don't think any of our value wants to jam. So it's kind of face up when we jam. Obviously, he's going to have to fold to a jam a lot, but I just can't come up with a value hand that is interested in just piling in on the turn. So I think I like either block or pot. But anyway, in game, I went for this like 2/3-ish sizing. And we get a call. And let's see what solver has to say. So interesting, it likes half pot. This isn't really one of the sizes that I considered because I think this is kind of no man's land here. Where if we bet half pot, as I mentioned, like we're in a weird SPR spot. It does like checking a lot. Likes checking. It doesn't like checking our king 10 suited, which makes sense to me. But it's going for this half pot size when it does decide to bet the turn. I'm interested to see what it does on the river if we do take that line. But let's plug in. This is probably the closest size we have. We're kind of between half pot and this like 80%. Let's go for the 80% and see what it has to say. This will affect our bluffing frequency on the river for sure, depending which one of those sizes we use. And now we are on the river, and okay, yeah, it does like checking our hand. So where are our bluffs coming from? We've got ace 4. Yeah, makes sense. I'm not sure blocking straights is entirely relevant here, but certainly having an ace on our hand blocking ace jack is very relevant. My hand blocks king jack and king 10. Which I think is relevant. Certainly blocking, sorry, yeah, king jack and jack 10. I think blocking king jack is certainly relevant. I wonder if jack 10 even has to fold sometimes if we do jam the river. But queen 10 is jamming. Ace jack obviously can go 3 streets for value. Ace queen, all ace queen suited is jamming, obviously blocking ace jack and queen jack. Yep, ace king. These all seem to make sense. And then obviously overpairs aces, kings, queens. We can just go 3 streets for value pretty easily here. So anyway, let's see what this likes if we choose half pot on the turn. Half pot, call, 8 of hearts. Okay, yeah, now we are jamming a little bit more, but it still likes checking our hand. Okay. Interesting. I think either or is fine here. Again, I would love to be deeper. I think a lot of the time I get to the river in these spots and decide that I have better bluff candidates and I just give up, which I think is terrible because I end up with these double barrels in 3-bet pots, and then I just like check the river and it goes check, check, and the guy has like pocket 7s here that he would have folded, or he has like king 6 or something, where, you know, I think some of these spots waiting for the perfect bluff candidate is not great, and you just need to fire off sometimes. Again, I think checking here and giving up with our exact combo is completely fine. I do go for it, and we do get a fold, which is great given the SPR that we had on the river. And again, I think the turn spot, we have a sizing decision to make, and I don't love the size that we chose. And then the river, you know, I could be sold on either option on the river, but we do decide to go for it, and thankfully this time it works. Let's take a look at one more. Actually, we'll take a look at 2 more. This one's going to be quick. This is also from my Play and Explain. We have got pocket kings in the cutoff. We open it up, and we get min 3-bet from the button. We are going to 4-bet the kings. Let's just plug this in. We've got raise. Obviously, GTO Wiz is going to assume a real 3-bet size. That's not a min raise. Gets back to us. We've got kings. This is a pure 4-bet, not all in. Again, similar spot where you can jam with ace king off, out of position. I would never do this in position, but I think ace king off is totally fine to just cram it in there if you want. We 4-bet and we get a call. We have got 4 of diamonds, 7 of spades, deuce of spades. Another disconnected low board where I am probably going to check or half pot a lot, which for the most part GTO Wiz is good with, but it does slightly prefer this quarter pot size, which I think is good also. I think range betting for a small size here is totally good. Don't love checking. I think checking's fine, but especially given the min raise and the fact that the SPR is like a little deeper here than it is in GTO Wiz. Like notice here, it says 43 big blinds in the pot. And here we've only got like 25. So, you know, I don't love checking because I want to get stacks in with kings. So the fact that we have a higher SPR here means that I like betting a little bit bigger and I like betting more often. So long story short, I do decide to go for the half pot, and we get a jam. So let's look at pocket kings specifically. So our combo of king, I mean, all combos of kings are essentially going to play this flop the same. It does prefer the 1/4 size over our half pot. So good thing to keep in mind. But, obviously we're never folding to this jam. But let's take a look at what the button should be jamming in position on the flop here. So again, this is assuming that the SPR is way shallower in GTO Wiz than in game. So this jam in game is huge compared to what we've got here. But anyway, you can see that they're jamming worse overpairs a lot. So 9s, 10s, jacks, queens are jamming the flop. This is kind of exactly what our half pot size is built around, is putting their worst overpairs in a really bad spot. Especially on this board where, overpairs are essentially the nuts on 7-4 deuce in a 4-bet pot. So, pocket 10s is going to be the best hand a lot. So they're jamming pocket 10s, ace 5, ace 4. Ace 4 of spades is calling sometimes because it's so high equity that it can just play in position. The rest of the ace 4s are jamming. So obviously the fact that this guy's in position means that he can realize his equity a lot better than if he was out of position. So I think in his shoes, flatting with ace 4 is just such a high equity hand that I think this is completely fine. And then jamming with the other ace 4s with a backdoor straight draw and bottom pair seems totally fine. You can probably get some better hands to fold, and your hand still has equity when called. And then ace 5 is kind of the opposite, where because it doesn't have that pair, ace 5 of spades is jamming, and the others are calling. So you get to realize the equity of the straight draw, and then the super high equity ace 5 with the backdoor straight draw, gutter. So backdoor straight draw on the top end, gutter and flush draw are all in. So that's kind of my interpretation of this. But anyway, point being, worse overpairs are jamming the flop. So this is obviously great for us, and we are never fold. So we call and we lose, but I like the play. Let's look at one more. We have got ace 5 in the small blind. It's going to go cut off raise. We 3-bet to 4x from the small blind. Seems pretty standard so far. So we've got a cut off raise. Folds to us in the small blind. Again, we're going to play no flats here, so pretty standard 3-bet. And let's see, we get a call. We get a call. 6 of spades, 3 of hearts, deuce of diamonds. Another really disconnected board here, or just low in general. I mean, in these 3-bet pots, both of us can definitely have pocket 6s here, maybe even pocket 3s for me, and he can certainly have pocket 3s. There will probably be, does anybody have 5-4? Let's see. Yeah, the cutoff has 5-4 at some frequency, and I don't have 5-4 at all. Okay, interesting. But anyway, because this board is not great for my range, significantly better for the cutoff's calling range than my 3-betting range out of the small blind, I think we want to either check or bet on the larger side. Our hand, I think, definitely benefits from betting. I think we get better ace highs to fold. So, if I bet 3/4 on the flop here, a hand like ace jack off or ace 10 of clubs or whatever has to fold, which is great, obviously. And then our hand still has some pretty high equity when we get a call, so we can continue on future streets. And I think betting with our hand has a lot of merit. So I do go for this like 2/3 size, and we get a call. So let's see. Yeah, GTO Wiz likes checking a bunch because this board is so bad for us compared to the cutoff's calling range. But when it is betting, it's betting 3/4, which seems to make sense. So over pairs, things like nines, tens, jacks, um, Jack 10 with backdoors. So all these like suited broadways are going to be betting with backdoor flush draws, but not when they don't have a backdoor. Our hand, yeah, check or bet 3/4 seems good. So we go for the 3/4 and get a call. We get the queen of diamonds. So if we think about the pre-flop and flop ranges for both of us here, the queen should be significantly better for me than the cutoff. I'm going to continue, as we saw with a bunch of those backdoor flush draw Broadway hands. I'm going to have a bunch of queens that I'm going to bet on the flop that now connect with top pair, where he's going to fold a bunch of his queens on the flop. So I should be much more queen heavy than him. And I think because of this, we want to be betting often. Again, we need to take into account the SPR here if we want to fire the river. Similar story in a bunch of these hands where we need to make a decision on the turn about what size we want to bet in case we want to triple barrel. So because the queen is so good for us, I think we can bet it a ton. And again, we can kind of go for that bigger size and maximize fold equity on the turn, or we can kind of block and then be able to jam the river. In game, I decided to go for the block-ish. This is about third pot. I think I like it. I think a queen can definitely, if I have ace queen, I think this is super easy to just like block and then jam the river. I still have king, queen jack, queen 10. Over pairs for sure. I still have kings. I'm completely uncapped. So I have aces, kings, queens, ace, queen, pocket sixes. So I think I like it. I could also get behind a larger size here, but I think that would mean we're giving up the river a lot. We do get a call, so let's take a look. Yeah, it looks like we can either go for like 20% check or half pot. Again, the half pot. Let's see what the SPR GTO Wiz has. We have like a little over pot left in stack. And before we bet the turn, yeah, we've got a little over pot. So the SPR is similar. Yeah, I think the half pot puts us in a weird spot on the river if we do want to continue. But I think it makes some sense. I think we get folds from a lot of pocket pairs between like sixes and queens. I don't know if like pocket tens is going to be folding, but I think like sevens, eights, nines probably fold the half pot on the turn, and they might continue to this like 20%. But our hand is betting the turn pure, it looks like. So it looks like GTO Wiz is fine with kind of any size from our hand on the turn. So I think our line's fine. We go for, again, we're going to have to pick the closest available option for us, which, yeah, this one's about a third. So seems to be what we went with. And we get a call. Queen of clubs. Now we've got a decision to make. So let's look at the qualities of our hand. What do we block? What do we unblock? Obviously, we block ace queen. We block ace queen suited, which is nice. So like if I had ace five of clubs or ace five of diamonds, I wouldn't block ace queen suited. Again, I block 5-4, but I guess cutoff could definitely have 5-4 in this line. I think just calling down in position is probably the best bet when you have the nuts on the flop for them. So whether 25 zone players actually have 5-4 in these spots, who knows? But I think it is relevant to have a 5 in our hand. We don't block diamonds, which I think is great. So if the cutoff continued the flop with like Jack 10 of diamonds, picks up a flush draw on the turn, calls the turn, and now just says Jack high. Obviously, they're folding. So I like following through with Ace 5 of spades a lot better than I like following through with Ace 5 of diamonds. Yeah, I think we have about half pot, a little over half pot left. I think firing the river is probably fine. Again, can't really wait for the perfect bluff spot all the time. So this is one thing where I'm trying to, not just wave the white flag quite as often on the river, especially when I have a blocker to effectively the nuts, and I have a somewhat relevant blocker to trips here. So I think this is a fine candidate to just cram the river. Let's see what GTO Wiz thinks. So we have obviously no non-all-in sizes on the river, given the SPR. Let's take a look. Okay, so Ace 5 of diamonds is checking 100%. Okay, so this, as I was mentioning, is blocking those flush draws that would continue on the turn for the cutoff and then have to fold the river. So yeah, I don't like continuing with Ace 5 of diamonds. And then Ace 5 of clubs unblocks all the backdoor flush draws that the cutoff has on the flop. So like, hearts and spades are going to continue more often on the flop than clubs because they have a backdoor flush draw. So not surprising to see clubs following through the most often of the Ace 5 combos on the river. And then for our hand, it looks like it prefers check, which I think makes some sense, but it is bluffing some of the time. And then similar for Ace 5 hearts. So looks like we can go either way. Let's check out where our other bluffs are coming from. Jack 10 suited is in there. Yeah, so Jack 10 suited. Blocking like... I guess it has a blocker to like Queen Jack and Queen 10 off. Is that relevant? Probably not entirely. Pocket Jacks can jam for value, I guess. Seems reasonable. Quads, we're all in. Obviously, overpairs can just go 3 streets here for value. Ace, King, sometimes. King 10, yep, blocking King, Queen, and Queen 10. So we're pretty much using hands that are blocking a Queen and unblocking draws that are going to continue on the turn. So again, our hand seems fine to go either way. We do go for it, and we get called by Pocket Jacks. Seems fine from the opponent here. Just call the 3-bet and then call down in position for 3 streets. I think their line is totally fine. So yeah, just some interesting spots from the last couple of days. It's always fun to look at what solver thinks and kind of adapt that to the player pool that we're in. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.